Welcome back to the 128KB podcast. It is back.
Yes.
After a lack of popular demand, we thought, sod it, let's just bring it back.
We want to do it, so we're making it, and you're going to watch it.
Basically, it's an excuse for us to sit down and talk about games and call it work. And it's not. It's just you joining us chatting about games.
Oh, yes.
And we've got some games to chat about.
Oh, and one in particular, well, multiple, but, you know.
I mean, in the future, it's going to be regular. We promise we'll do it for longer than 2 months like we did last time.
1 week.
1 week podcast, and that was it. Yes, so today you're going to join us as we talk about everything Final Fantasy VII.
Ooh.
And in particular, obviously, I've just completed Crisis Core.
Yep.
And I just want to geek out about it.
And I've played a bit of it, so...
so perfect.
So
it's one of the few games we've both actually played at least some of.
Yeah, and recently.
Yeah.
So like, I wanted to sort of touch on my history with Final Fantasy, and it was specifically 7.
Yeah.
Because we've both come from slightly different angles, haven't we?
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously as a kid in the 90s, I sort of experienced Final Fantasy VII multiple times. My brother had it.
Yep.
Some of my friends had it. And I always wanted to get into it, but I never owned it. So I couldn't just sit down and play it. So I'd only experienced parts of it, mainly the beginning bit, like over and over and over again. But I loved the aesthetics. I loved the whole like world building, character like development and everything.
Yeah.
But I was never one for turn-based fighting, even though I'm like play Pokemon and stuff.
I was just going to say, you're a big Nintendo player. Of course you like turn-based games.
Everyone says I'm a hypocrite.
You are.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe I am. But either way, I could never really get into it. And I reckon it's probably because I didn't own it. But I always wanted to.
It was, sorry.
No, go on.
For me, it was the first game that I had and experienced as my own.
Yeah. Okay,
Does that make sense?
Totally.
Before that, it was always shared experiences with my brothers or my friends.
Yeah.
We'd play and complete games together. So I had deep experiences with other games all the way back to Atari.
Nice.
But Final Fantasy VII, I was 12, maybe 13. I got it near its release. And it was the first game I truly experienced on my own. And it gripped me. And that feeling, that emotion hasn't left me in all the years since.
The nostalgia is
Massive.
strong.
Yeah, definitely.
So for me, like, you know, liking my action RPG combat, well, with the PSP, I was all over that. I actually I imported my PSP from Japan and my Nintendo DS way before the UK got them.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was hooked on the PSP and the DS. Like, I'm a handheld lover as always, right?
Yeah.
And I loved it. And then Crisis Core came out. And I've read, whether it was in a magazine or something, it's action combat. And I was like, oh, yeah, like that. Now I can get into it. You know? I knew nothing about Crisis Core, where it was sat in the storyline. I didn't know anything, but I was like, I want that. And I played probably like a third of it.
Yeah.
Not that I really remember.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So the remake, for those of you, if you've been sleeping under a rock or just don't know, the remake tells the story of before Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah,
so
it's like a
prequel.
Yeah.
And it tells the story of a really important character that you don't really see in Final Fantasy VII, but that's alluded to the whole time, called Zack.
Yeah.
And he is a proper hero.
Yeah.
The remake, I thought, was going to change the storyline somehow because of some things that happened in the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Yeah.
Right at the end of the first chapter. But no, it is just literally a scene-for-scene remake. There's some bits that they've rebuilt, some of the summon RPGs,
all the
FMV sequences.
CGIs, of the summoning is all fresh.
But everything else is identical, to the point where a lot of the FMV sequences are exactly the same.
Yeah.
They've just been upscaled.
Yeah.
And you get some weird artifacting happening. I wasn't sure if it was exactly a frame-for-frame remake until after I completed it and was aware that the story hadn't changed at all, which throws up some questions for later. But also afterwards, I was like, I'm really into the lore right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and watch Advent Children.
Yep.
Which, for those of you who don't know, is a film that tells the story after Final Fantasy VII. And in it, there's loads of flashbacks to Crisis Core and Cloud and Zack's interactions in it. And it's the same FMVs in that film that are in the Crisis Core remake, exactly frame for frame.
Yeah, amazing.
Like, they just didn't change a thing. It's glorious for it as well.
Yeah.
I would say it's 100%. Obviously, if you're a Final Fantasy fan, you have to play it. You have to.
Yeah.
But if you've never experienced Final Fantasy VII, I think you could genuinely jump into this as your first experience, and it's a really good, fun action RPG.
And that's where I'm coming from now. Like when Crisis Core Reunion was announced, I was like, well, I remember the PSP game.
Yeah.
I remember it was meant to be like a prequel.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to dive into Remake on PS5, because I'd never played 7. You told me it's an action RPG Remake. And I was like, well, I want to get in on this. Where do I start? And then Crisis Core Reunion was like, well, now I have no excuse.
Yeah.
And, being on Switch, me being a handheld lover.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can just play this anywhere, wherever I want, and finally get into it. And then obviously when I started playing, because I know 7 Remake is a complete ground up new game, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Built on the story and stuff of the first
built
one.
around the story.
Yeah. Whereas this one is basically just a reskin of the PSP version.
Yes.
And it's funny because I hadn't played a game of that era for a while now. And jumping into Reunion, I loved it. I remember everything I love about linear games from like the mid 2000s.
At first, I was a bit.
I know you weren't as into it.
My first 5 hours, I was a bit like, oh, I don't know. The dialogue, it's like, gee, because I played it in English, which was a mistake.
And normally I opt for Japanese.
If you haven't started it yet, or you want to restart it, do it in Japanese because I think it's going to be a lot better.
Probably will be, yeah.
The dialogue is repetitive and annoying. There's some sequences, some missions, and some challenges you have to do, and they've obviously just copy and pasted the dialogue each time. So, like Zach will say the same phrase each time you fail to do a task. It's like, oh. Or each time you engage in a battle, it's exactly the same every time. But you quite quickly forgive that. And then I started really falling in love with that linear, I used to call them corridor games.
Yeah.
The game has set you on a very narrow path.
Yeah.
Follow it.
Yeah.
Now, there's things that you may miss, the secret parts. Side quests.
Little bits dotted around, like the odd chest or whatever.
Yeah, in a very Final Fantasy or Japanese game in general, always look behind you.
Yeah,
because there's going to be stuff.
Try not to go the way you're
Go the way you're not meant to go, because there'll be things that you should get. But yeah, I started really falling in love with not having to make too many decisions and just enjoying the gameplay and the story.
Yeah, because it's almost like watching a movie.
Yes.
And I love open world games, don't get me wrong, but sometimes you just want to be put into the right direction.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So that you get pushed through the storyline and experience it rather than feeling lost or thinking, oh, what should I do? Oh, there's some side quests or whatever. This is like, all right, you're in a hub world and you've got these instances. Basically, it's an instance-based game.
I'm curious about the Final Fantasy Remake Chapter 2. What are they calling it? Rebirth, is it?
Yeah.
The second part. If they're going to do the same thing.
Really?
I'm really curious about it. Because the Chapter 1, you're just in Midgar. So if you know the story at all, it takes you from the start of Final Fantasy VII, where you do the first mission on the train, right through to when you and the party leave Midgar, the city.
Right.
There's very little you can do within the confines of Midgar anyway.
Right.
So it is quite linear.
Yeah.
And it is in the original. It's very linear until you get to the open world and you get to see the world map, they call it. And then you can technically go anywhere.
Yeah.
So the first one already had that confines. We've seen the remake and they didn't change a thing.
Yes. Yeah.
I wonder if it was like a little way of hinting perhaps they're going to remove elements of the open world structure.
Maybe.
It'd be a huge world to make.
Yeah. I really don't know how they would go about
How would
doing
people
that.
react to that as well?
I mean, to me, Crisis Core Reunion was let's just reskin this and get it out quick to buy time for Rebirth.
There was another really important reason why they did it. And that's the storyline.
Yeah, definitely.
They had to tell the story of Zack for people that played. So for people that didn't play the original Final Fantasy VII and the remake was their first experience, they got Chapter 1. Yes, Crisis Core is a lovely stepping stone to keep people excited. But Zack suddenly has become very important to the new storyline of Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, so they've adjusted the Final Fantasy VII Remake to incorporate him.
Yeah, he's now more important.
Yes.
And I'm trying to address it in a way without doing too many spoilers.
Because I haven't played Remake yet.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin it for you.
Because my plan is literally to finish Crisis Core and then dive into it.
Knowing what happens, because you haven't played the original, so it won't ruin Remake for you at all. But the confusing part is that Zack is there at the end of Final Fantasy Chapter 1's remake.
Yeah.
Zack is there. So Zack has a future part to play in the new story of Final Fantasy VII. So they had to tell the story of Zack
again. Yeah. So people knew who he was and why he's there.
And why am I emotionally attached to this character? Why are so many members of the party aware of this person?
And that's
without a huge side quest in the story. of Final Fantasy VII
definitely.
Remake.
And that's why I wanted to start with Crisis Core, so that I was doing it in the right sort of progression. Do you know what I mean? And I know I was getting confused with talking off camera. You know, I was saying, they've changed Crisis Core to flow into 7 Remake better. And then after AJ completed it, he was like, they haven't changed it at all.
It's not a thing,
It's 7 Remake they've adjusted to incorporate Zack from Crisis Core. So I was like, but there we go.
Now,
so
I got really geeky with this. So I started really looking into this. So there's people on YouTube that are really deep into the lore.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it went this deep.
Oh yeah.
and so people are trying to answer this question of
it's just you with different accounts.
Is Zack there? Why is Zack there? And the most common theory that I can see is that the games and the story did happen in the order that they're happening.
Okay.
So Crisis Core was first.
Yeah.
Then Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
And then we have in the story timeline, Crisis Core Remake happens and the Final Fantasy VII Remake happens.
All right.
So they all do exist. It doesn't replace it. It's just a new timeline happens for a very important reason. And they believe that Sephiroth, the antagonist, can travel in time.
Right.
So he's rewriting history.
That's a good way of thinking. And this is just fan fiction.
It's fan fiction. Yeah. But in the remake, there's some reasons why there's some things happen that don't happen in the original games that make you think that might actually be true.
Yeah. It's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
So you're like, okay. Because also in the first original version of Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth doesn't really make any appearance of note until after you leave the city of Midgar.
Right. Oh, okay.
You hear about him? Yeah.
That one ends.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
And already in the remake, there's loads of Sephiroth. You encounter him loads.
Got you.
Well, Cloud does. So it's clearly different. And he's clearly a bigger part to play. So, anyway, I got deep. I got into the weeds.
I like it. It just makes me more excited to play it, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm only I think I was something like 8 hours into Crisis Core Reunion, and it's mainly because I'm doing all the missions.
Definitely.
So all the side quests bit to be as overpowered as I can.
I'll say this, my other criticism of Crisis Core is the leveling system. It wouldn't have been too hard for them to implement a dynamic leveling system for the bosses, at least.
Yeah.
Maybe not the random encounters, because that's a lot of work, but at least the bosses, because if you're like Andy or myself, you'll probably like this if you like Final Fantasy VII, and you go off and you do the side missions, you get really overpowered.
Yeah.
You get all these abilities, this materia, the strength, vitality that you wouldn't normally have. So when you come to do the storyline, you're like one-shotting them and that was so easy. Or just spamming an ability.
Literally, I did the main story mission until you get to the missions bit and did every mission there. Went and did the next step in the story and was like, why am I like a god?
Just literally that's it, done. Oh, one magic, done.
And he's like, am I first class yet? It's like, you're a master, mate.
Mate, skip to the end, you're ready.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they set up even right down to the final encounter, which I won't ruin it for you, what it is. But the final encounter was just so easy by that point.
Yeah, you were saying to me.
It was disappointingly easy.
Yeah.
Didn't even come close to dying.
I'd probably get owned.
I reckon you're probably at a stage where you could do it now and it'd be a nice challenge.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
So my point is, it would have been nice if they introduced a dynamic system where at least the stage bosses or the storyline bosses leveled up with you.
Scaled to your level, yeah.
Yeah,
that would make sense. Definitely.
That would be cool. But they didn't. So it was really easy. But it did mean it was like playing a movie. Yeah. And it was really nice. Yeah. I loved it for that.
And I think that's one of the main reasons why I've been trying to do as many missions as possible.
Yeah.
So that I can then play through the storyline and absorb it a bit more. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So we were talking about this because Crisis Core, you've got the main missions. Like we said, you've got this hub world and you go and do the main missions. And then you've got the missions on the save point, which you can do. So it is very old school linear style, you know, almost like fetch quests style.
It's dungeon based.
Yeah. It's instances, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but then, 7 Remake isn't like that then. No, because I haven't played it yet. I've avoided as many spoilers as I can. I've not even seen gameplay. I've got the game.
So technically, it's like all RPGs. They're kind of technically still dungeon crawlers. In a roundabout way. Just the dungeons are bigger.
Yeah, but you don't like go and click on, I want that mission.
No.
I want that mission.
Yeah, like Crisis Core literally is open the save point and I want to enter this dungeon. And it's like corridor, few ways to go.
Yeah, that's
some tricky encounters and in the end. No, Final Fantasy VII doesn't have that system at all.
Right, so you're always pushing through a new area, is it? Like, yeah, cool.
You can backtrack.
Yeah.
There's parts you can go to. There's loads of side missions on the way. Yeah. Like you'd expect from an RPG that will give you like hidden items, some completely pointless, but help you 100% the game if you're one of them.
Yeah.
Platinum
see,
seekers.
I think I'm doing it the right way around because I think if I'd have done that first and then gone to Crisis Core, I would have had the same sort of thought of you as you had, where it was a bit like,
at first, it's
don't know if I like this. Whereas for me, the nostalgia of like just mid 2000s games, I jumped into Crisis Core like, oh yeah, this is how games were. Like,
are you playing it handheld or on the screen?
Both.
Was it like handheld?
Amazing.
I imagine
because that's what I love about the Switch. It's basically the same performance.
Yeah.
Whether it's docked or not.
I just imagine it as an experience is really nice.
On the OLED,
yeah,
spectacular. Because the blacks, like all the colours, everything looks beautiful. You know, and I've been playing with, been using that retro flag, like GameCube inspired grip with the Hall effect sensors and everything. So it's a real nice grip on it. Yeah. You can do all the moves and everything. It's great. And then sticking it on the telly, which we've got an OLED TV, it looks great. Even though it's probably downgraded compared to, you know, like the PS5 that you've been playing on it.
I don't know.
It looks great. It really does.
The remake isn't like super. The graphics aren't great.
Yeah.
So it's not like Final Fantasy VII Remake where the graphics were really good. It's all right. What I genuinely loved about it as well, we said at the start, it's one of the few games recently that we've both been able to play.
Yeah, and at the same time.
Yeah. And it's mainly because if I'm looking to play a new game, I tend to look to play it on the PlayStation. Yeah. I've got a Switch at home, but I tend to look for the PlayStation.
Yeah.
And you're the other way around.
Yeah.
You'll tend to look on the Switch.
Yeah.
Because you like that handheld experience. So what's been really nice is that it's an experience that Nintendo and PlayStation fans can join together and share.
Yeah. And it's pretty much the same experience no matter which you're playing on. You know, it's not like the PS5 version is like ultimate 8K, you know, and then it looks like a potato on Switch. It's an old game revamped anyway, so it probably looks very similar.
I would, you
know,
I wouldn't be surprised if it looked better on the Switch OLED.
Yeah,
than it does on TV.
Yeah. Handheld is
you'll see less of the artifacts of the upscaled, especially the upscaled movie sequences.
Yeah, true. But, you know, the PS5 is probably trying to push it at a higher resolution, whereas the Switch is like, whatever.
Don't matter. So I've loved it. If you've not played it yet, do it. It's such a great game experience. Even if you're not into Final Fantasy, it's just an awesome action RPG.
And just to like reiterate as well, because it's not like 7 Remake or what I'd class as like a normal RPG, it is instance based.
Yes.
So you can literally jump in for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Do a mission, finish that mission, save, close game. You're not locked into like 2-hour play sessions.
No.
Like you would be like in an original RPG. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So for me, that's what's been great for me because I can pick it up handheld and I could be anywhere, do 10 minutes, do a couple of missions, put it down, great. Yeah. And then if I want to do the storyline, I need to know, okay, I need a half an hour, an hour here.
Yeah.
And then I can do that.
There was actually
really
a few occasions where I did just pick it up and just spam a couple of missions, literally 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Just got 10 minutes spare. I was like, I'll just do.
So that's why I think it's worthwhile for people to try because some people think Final Fantasy, like, I haven't got 5-hour sessions. Do you know what I mean?
I don't want a 90-hour game.
Yeah. And even if they did, they might not have that much time to dump in it there. But Crisis Core Reunion is to the point where no matter what console you play it on, you know, it's very forgiving in terms of time. You know, you can just choose however long you want to play. And
it's a casual RPG.
It's a really casual experience, and I love that.
Yeah. And I loved the story. I loved reliving that part of the story. I love that it's more than a stepping stone until the new Final Fantasy VII. it's reignited my passion for it.
Well, that's what made me instantly go and buy 7 Remake. I think I'd done like 2 hours, and then I messaged you going, "Look what I've just bought." Because I immediately went, "I love this."
Yeah.
That means AJ's right. I'm going to love 7 Remake. So I just bought it on sale or whatever, and I'm ready. You know, when I finally finish Crisis Core, I'm going to start 7 Remake. So I'm super hyped.
I'll say this: the fighting system in 7 Remake is different.
Than
Crisis Core.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because Crisis Core, you're always solo. It's always Zack fighting on his own.
Yeah, true. Whereas
you're party based.
Originally, 7 was turn based with a party, wasn't it?
You're still party based in 7.
How's that going to work then without it being turn based? Can you switch between?
Yeah.
Right. Got you.
Yeah. So it's not turn based, but you can switch between. So there's more elements of thinking. So you have to protect each other members of the group still.
Yeah.
It's just different. I really loved the fighting system in Crisis Core.
Yeah.
I thought it was more arcade like.
That's what I think I liked. Yeah, I really enjoyed that because it was hack and slashy, isn't it? You know, like, and I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess that about wraps up geeking out about Final Fantasy 7 for now.
So yeah, I really enjoy the whole thing. For me, there's someone that's always wanted to get into Final Fantasy but never could because I always felt locked out because I didn't want to spend that much time or get into the combat of turn-based. This has enabled someone like me to get into it and actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, I've always liked the idea. It's not like I've gone, oh, I don't like that. I've loved everything about it. Just didn't really want to do turn-based.
Yeah.
So this is hopefully if you're out there and you're like me, you should try it out.
What a great way to end it.
There we go.
Thanks for joining us on this little
thank you so much.
podcast about Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah. And whilst you're here, obviously subscribe to see more.
Yeah.
And why don't you check out some of AJ's PlayStation videos up here?
And if you're really bored, check out some of Andy's Nintendo videos. Just there. Isn't that nice? Nice little plug.
Yeah, there we go.
You got me really bored though. Like 17,000 others. Until next time.
Bye.